Thank you so much, Dr. Kulshrestha. It's One Place Sports' honor to be broadcasting this international webinar all across the world.
Working out, training hard, of course is required, but it's not enough. Relaxation is absolutely essential.
Our experience and expertise to help set up Olympic studies centers based at the university level in India.
Professor Pere Lavega, who's joined us from Spain for an extremely exciting discussion that we have lined up for you. So I'll just give a very quick introduction of Dr. Pere Lavega. So he's the president of the European Association of Traditional Sports and Games and a professor and head of research at the National Institute of Physical Education of Catalonia at the University of Lleida in Spain. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. And we have an extremely exciting topic that we will be discussing with Professor Lavega, and we'll be talking about how we can actually encourage local culture through sport and traditional games. So how exactly we can think not just globally, but locally as well, and not just think, but act both globally as well as locally and encourage local culture through sport and traditional games. Dr. Pere Lavega, we have lots of viewers who are joining us on our One Place Sports Networks, and they're extremely excited to listen to your presentation. So you have the next 35 minutes to present to them. And then at the end, we can leave about 2 or 3 minutes for Q&A as well. So the stage is set for you, Dr. Lavega.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizers of this event. I think that it's very, very important to promote this sort of online meetings in order to do our best to share world networks. And now at this moment, we can take profit of the technologies to be there. I'm talking to you from Lleida, from Spain, and you are in India or some other countries, and there isn't any problem to keep in touch. So it's a really pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. I would like to share my presentation with all of you, trying to be very practical in order to show you one dimension of a sport when we are talking about culture that sometimes it's not very well known, but it's very important to be present when we talk about Olympism, the values and education. So let me share with all of you my presentation. Okay, the idea is how we should provide some tools to promote the local culture through sport, through traditional games. That means to think globally in order to act in a local way. So I was telling you that I will try to do my best in order to be very practical in my presentation. I will follow 4 parts, and let's go to start with the first one. When we are talking what intangible cultural heritage means. And then I was telling you that never mind when we are focusing the attention, because around the world we can identify a great variety of traditional games, traditional sports with different rules, and then they are sharing many common values, and this should be highlighted. So there I was telling you that in this picture some players, elderly, they want to play and skittle games. It's just an example, and perhaps one key point could be to identify this part that is not visible. That means the usefulness of the uselessness of traditional games. You can see here one player, he's 96 years old. He loves this game and he wants to play, but he has problems with his vision. So then the players decided to paint in a very clear way with white color the pins in order to help him. That is the key point. What we are not saying, but they are there present as intangible cultural heritage, all the things that they are sharing, not just in an organic way, biological way, activating the earth, but they are activating many things that should be taken into account. They are sharing a non-utilitarian learning. Because here, in this sort of activities, there is no need to produce, to quantify, to accumulate material goods. The originality of these culture activities is that they are expressed player with motor actions, with body actions. In everywhere we can identify people playing through motor conducts. that they are testimony of signs and symbols of cultural identity. So there is a science, the science of motor action, that introduced this concept, ethnomotoricity. So that means the link of the game with the local culture. That means the link between the internal properties, that is the internal logic, with the other side of the same coin, the external logic, the context. Let's go to see it in a very easy way. The first thing, any game has different properties. And let me use this situation to understand better what I mean to tell you. What happens in the music? The musician can see a music competition, music score. Here you can see different notes, and the musician follows, understands, and interprets these notes, these musical notes, these laws, harmony, rhythm, and sense. And then he tries to do his best, her best, to be adapted there. What happens in a game? The same. Any game follows the grammar of the game through motor actions. Any player must be adapted to his or her motor actions to the game internal logic. So any game has an internal logic, that means an identity card, that means different properties. There are not games of first category or secondary category. They are just games that they are different, the same that the sports. And then we can see that any game can be considered as a laboratory of social relationships. That means that when we connect the internal logic with the cultural context, that is the external logic, because they are external to the rules, then we can understand the real and the deep meaning of this sort of activities, because traditional games are like showcases of the local community's cultures. They are linked to secular beliefs, performed according to traditional rites and ceremonies, inspired by practices from everyday physical games for part of cultural heritage generated by the body dialogue, generated by motor action, motor conducts. And for this reason, traditional games as cultural showcases are very connected with some other cultural manifestations like food, music, dancing, relationships. But in everywhere it's the same. Everywhere there is a very close connection with local culture. For this reason, we can find out the same values in order to start to learn to think globally, in order to act locally. Traditional games are a mirror of local communities' culture. And in this way, we could say that each player enacts the memory of tradition through motor conducts. In a very easy way, we can connect our culture playing a game that is connected with culture, with local culture. Let me show you an example. Here in Tunisia, we did some experiences with people from abroad, and then a colleague from France, for instance, show how to play an skittle game from France. And then we can see that it's a very clear way that playing a game, a traditional game, is one way to enter in a society and to be socialized. Because by playing, people from different cultures live in a very intensive way the local culture from an internal point of view, playing the rules. And in the scenario proposed by any traditional games allows the actors to participate with a language that is equal for everybody, in a simple, anyone can play, and a deep form. Let's see one example. We have studied through different colleagues the games of Tunisia, the same country. It's just an example. We can see that after identifying these games, more than the majority of these games are collective games. What are telling us? People want to play together. The relationships are very important, with different rules, very original. If they are using any field, they can use many different areas, and they have no 62%, they have not a final score. That means people are not divided in winners or losers. So there we can start to understand the values that are connected with this sort of games. From the other point of this coin, the external logic, the 77% of games are played with objects. that are taken in a sustainable way from the environment, the local environment, the natural environment, and they are playing in some moments of the year. So that is the way to understand what intangible cultural heritage means, because any game behaves like a society, in a small society, a miniature society. And we should say that we should tell you that any game has some rules, and the rules are the depositories of signs of identity of local culture. Rules tell us in which way we can play, but these rules has been constructed, built by the society. So they are showcases of this identity of local culture. It's important so to connect games with the culture in order that any game should be examined in its social and historical context. I know because I am living here in Spain, in Catalonia, and this is one of the most representative example. So let me use it to understand what I'm telling you, because here there are a lot of people that they are connected, like it was a network for these rules of this activity that are depositories of things of identity of the local culture. Some people says that Gaudí was inspired by the Castellers, the human towers, to build the Sagrada Familia, Barcelona. Let's go to see some similarities. Here, it's incredible. It's the same, almost it's the same, but with different originalities, because we are talking about the cultural heritage. But when we talk about human towers, the originality are motor actions. Our body is the body language, is the immaterial heritage where people play the game and disappears very quickly. In the other side, Sagrada Familia and architectural construction is a material heritage. There are stones, there are some aspects that are always there. But in our field, motor actions are putting in action the collective memory. And in the same way that the Sagrada Familia, the cathedral, has an structure, Castellers, for instance, human towers, as well as any game, has an internal logic, an internal structure. In this way, is a cooperative structure where everybody want to do their best in a cooperative way. So then, when they try to train this activity, they are being adapted to this internal logic, and each player try to do their best to enact these actions, this memory of tradition. So everybody is trying there to be connected, to achieve the same goal. Some similarities, but they are also very different. People can be placed in different fields, doing different actions, but all necessary actions together. And then each person try to activate in a unique, in a systemic way, the emotions, the decision takings, the relationships with other people. So there, when a person adapts to the internal logic of the human towers, that person learns to communicate, learns to mean. So there, emotion, decision, relationship, and physical effort represent the intangible cultural heritage and dimension of human towers. And people, when they start to do something like that, although they are not conscientious, they are learning to enter in their society. And then each person actives the deepest part of his or her personality. The immigrants learn to live local culture in a very, very deep way. And through playing traditional games, people learn to encode, to decode, to interpret cultural signs. And there, one key point is the emotion, because the affective local culture is learned. And then we can see a lot of many different sort of expression in feelings. When the goal is achieved, the positive emotions are there. And players start to learn what they are feeling, what is feeling the community. And each person lives a unique singular experience to interpret the internal logic of the game. So look at this. Emotions are experienced with a great intensity. It's wonderful. where we connect the game with the local culture, because there is where we can find the deepest meaning. Let's go to what is happening when the players try to build a human tower. The leader of the group try to give the players some instructions, and people that are seeing there, they are connected with this emotional contagion, tension, pressure, anxiety. What will happen? We don't know. But finally, when the tower reaches the objective, happiness and a cultural effervescence is there. You can see in a very clear, visible way what is happening looking at the faces of that people. So all together, playing a traditional game like Human Towers is sharing many emotional effects of this activity: tension, risk, mental image, joy, fear, sadness. All is possible depending on what will happen in any match. So there we can see that there are a lot of people that connected with the local dimension. It's a great emotional community, this community of Human Towers. And through this type of games, we are considering that they represent the culture in motor actions, and they provide, it's a culture that is provided to be lived through motor actions. And it's very, very important for nowadays, because traditional games and sports shape social attitudes. When a person shares an experience of well-being with other people, then the relationships are shared in a very deeply way too. So intangible culture is a way to enter into society, and the promotion of this sort of activities can therefore be an excellent bridge to learn to live together. Another key point in democracy, and for becoming people that is living in a very, very in an intercultural world. Let's go to the second part, because it's very important to demonstrate, not to use just nice words. We need to demonstrate in our field which is the real contribution in current society, this sort of activities. So the education, the school is one of the keys for the present as well for the future of the society. And then the physical education is a magnific field. And which is my ideology? My ideology is to try to provide a physical education based on scientific evidences. Let's go to see, for instance, if we are ill and we go to visit a doctor, she is not a scientific, but his or her answers are based on evidences, scientific evidences. But on the other hand, normally we usually don't use scientific criteria. Not always. We need to give some tools if we want to innovate in physical education in order to achieve needs of the current society, like self-esteem, solidarity, peace, coexistence, gender equality, sustainability. And then traditional sports and games are a very important tool to achieve these sort of needs. So we need to promote research to generate, in a scientific point of view, the evidences, to identify examples of effective practices and to promote positive impact triggered by this sort of activities. Traditional games, we could say, that are a talisman to educate the personality of the protagonists. Encouraging people to play a traditional game means reviving the culture through motor actions. And what does it mean? It means reviving different levels. That means the emotional, the relational, the cognitive decision-making, and the energetic experiences that were played by all the ancients who have lived before us. It's very important to know that. And what happens about the physical education teacher? That he or she should be aware that by using this sort of activities, we can generate a great diversity of motor experiences. If we, in our ideology, if we defend a great variety of activities, then we can identify them through traditional games. And this sort of experiences involves a diversity of cultural learning, especially for living together. So the social relationship provides for traditional games develops a sense of belonging to the group, and a sense of collective identity. So playing these activities promotes the establishment of democratic coexistence through the acceptance of rules, rights, and prohibitions that should be respected. Look at these pictures. Their players are connected in the deepest way with their personality. It's a very deep education. Carpe diem, live in a very intensive way now, at this moment. That's important. And there, something is happening. People are sharing a contagion, for instance, in an emotional way. People are sharing a contagion in a relational way too. And people are doing their best to use the decision making through different activities, to different games that they are like problems, like nice problems to be solved. So it's very important to promote the research. In our case, we love to work as a teamwork. Here is my team research group of research on motor action, and we are connected with people from around the world, trying to share some cross-cultural researches. For instance, we have put in practice the same games as examples in different countries, in different continents, and we have compared them. What we have discovered? We have discovered that, for instance, through the same games, never mind where we are using them, we are in the conditions to provide a high level positive experiences in an emotional point of view. It's very important because their stimulus is the same and the consequences are the same. So here you have a very clear tool. We have used the same in different regions from Spain, and it happens the same. And when we have used different types of activities, because we can identify games from the relational point of view, we can identify games that they are played alone, psychomotor plays, that we are playing in a cooperative way, like human towers, cooperatives, games like, for instance, wrestling games that they are opposite games, one player against another, or games that can be played in a cooperative and opposition way. We have identified what has happened there from this emotional point of view, and we have seen that through cooperative games, we are able to activate the most intensity levels of emotions, positive emotions. So it's very important to know this. It's very important to find out the meaning of people when they have played, what has been happened there. And then we use different strategies, for instance, within that undergraduate students, based on reflection on action. After playing, they explain us what has happened. But we use these strategies, adapted, of course, in secondary school, for instance. And we use different questionnaires or tools to identify this part that is not visible. And then people explain us what is happening. In some games where the rules identify prisoners, for instance, that they can be in another situation for some moments, then we take profit of this and they ask them, what have you felt? What is happening there? And then we can start to understand the meaning of what is happening. In this slide, through a good friend from the north of Spain, Basque Country, Joseba Gonzalez, children from primary school, while some colleagues are playing, they are identifying in this case, the emotional experiences. So never mind the age of people, we can provide an intelligent physical education where people share many things. This is an example of an international project that we share with different secondary institutes from schools from France, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. And in the second year, these students shared in a festival, in a big festival of traditional games that was developed in Italy. They shared during a weekend some experiences. They explained what they felt there, and it was a very clear, deep, and nice experience in order to promote the intercultural dialogue in a very, very clear way. They shared, for instance, the experience to teach to primary school children from Italy some games. They share an international championship of this game that you can see in the middle, that is like we use to places, and it's like baseball in a traditional way. And so we can promote an education based on scientific evidences. And then we should introduce this sort of activities and knowledge in the university, in our undergraduate students too. Here you can see one example. We have done different activities in a real way with people in different villages, in different cities, in a not formal context. Then we can see the result of the experience. And after having played some traditional games, my undergraduate students can start to share this knowledge, to think about what is this information telling us about this connection between games and local culture. They play and they take notes and they analyze what they have experienced and they share in a cooperative way. And I'm sure that in the near future, when they become future professionals, they will provide a high quality physical education actions. We have organized also some workshop with educators, with professionals, physical education teachers, and with other strategies. After having played some different games, they analyze their results. And then they can notice that through these sort of activities, we can promote some very important values that, for instance, UNESCO highlights, like tolerance, culture of peace, dialogue among civilizations, dialogue among cultures, or rapprochement of cultures, because we can use very, very original rules, very great variety of games from around the world, because there are a great amount of options if we consider all the world. And it's important to publish papers, of course, but to give some very practical tools to our teachers. So it's an example. We have organized several MOOC courses, that means massive open free online courses. In this case, to highlight one core learning point issue, learning to live together through these games. And then, because from my point of view, it's necessary that any teacher be trained to recognize traditional games as intangible cultural heritage, and as a different means of education for living together. And in this course, we show that people, when they are playing, they are moving their bones, of course, their muscles, of course, but there happens something else. For instance, it's a great laboratory of relationships that should be found out. In the last part of my contribution, I would like to share with you the idea that from my point of view, one of the most important challenge nowadays is to try to do our best to go on a networking going from global to local. That means think globally in order to act locally. That means that when we have an open mind, when we identify games related to local culture from around the world, and when we identify that we share the same values, then we can understand that we are closer, that we are more similar than sometimes we could think. And then through this knowledge in a very practical way, we can understand, we start to understand which is the treasure of these sort of activities, that they are not very well known, but they are connecting all of us with our local culture, with our local meaning. So there are some institutions like UNESCO that they have tried to activate this networking. I would like to in 1 second to tell you that I'm president of the European Association of Traditional Games and Sports, and I'm vice president of the International Association of Traditional Games and Sports. Why? Because we feel the necessity to share this network in these both organizations: museums, schools, universities, federations of traditional sports, and local associations, cultural associations, work together at the same level, and in the direction that UNESCO is trying to provide. I'm an expert of UNESCO. I've been cooperating and I cooperate with them. They have organized different meetings They have organized different collective meetings in order to create this international platform of traditional games and sports. And I've been the pleasure to share these sort of activities in order to start to activate this world networking. In this picture, you can see some examples of ministers from different continents, from different countries, that they highlighted the idea to become a group of country friends of traditional sporting games, just to provide this sort of values that we are considering when we talk also to Olympism, values and the education. So at this moment, there are some in the strategic objectives, some issues, some challenges, the policy guidelines, an international platform, an online encyclopedia, and some resources related to management and communication. I was the coordinator of the first topic, and then we explained the necessity to consider all the context, the education, of course, the modality in the competition also, but the recreation, leisure, the tourism, all the context should be taken into account. Why? Because there, if we work in this open mind, on the left, we have seen in the past, in the previous slides, that we can provide the different dimensions of health, of well-being, like the organic dimension, the affective dimension, the relational dimension, and the cultural dimension. That means the global point of view of well-being in different contexts: education, recreation, festivals, federations, competitions, and with different stakeholders, with different agents, government experts, federation researchers, teachers, practitioners. So we need to activate this networking. It's necessary. It's very important and necessary. For this reason, in my last part of my speech, I would like to invite you. 2 invitations I'm going to present you. The first one is focusing the attention to physical education teachers, universities teachers, student researchers, as well as schools. Now we are sharing a world project in order to focus the attention in two issues. We could consider many issues, but we are just considering the fostering social inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities, and also in another way, at the same moment, in a parallel way, the gender equality. So teachers, schools, faculty, or researchers that would like to join in, please contact me, because at this moment we are trying to activate some courses, online courses, some practical guides, and also a tool, a very easy tool. We are trying to design an app that could be used in a very easy way after playing a game or using a session or a program. And we have the translation of this questionnaire in different languages, as you can see, in different languages, with this open mind and world vision. So if there are some of you who would be interested to share this project, please contact to me in a very free way. And the second invitation is for researchers. At this moment, I'm coordinating a top-level monography research topic in a high-level journal, Frontiers and Psychology, and this research topic is related to traditional games. So if you have some contribution in this area, please contact to me or look for the website of this journal. So through this message, I think that now we could understand better what means think globally and act locally in order to encourage local culture through sport and traditional games. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Lavega. It was a very interesting, exposure of the work which you have done in the field of traditional games all over the world. And I think this effort of the Indian Olympic Association Committee of India, they have really taken a leap into this particular area of globally uniting all the people, like-minded people who want to think together and act locally also. So I missed out your initial this thing because of some technical problems, but whatever I could attend after that, I think it was really mind blowing. It was something, which we really need to think globally and act locally. The contents of your speech, which have been divided into 4 different parts, right from beginning with the usefulness of the traditional games and the sports, and then coming down to the different aspects of scientific evidences, coming to the third part was training the graduates, and finally the research part of it. Professor, Indian culture has been basically based on that think that the entire world is a family. This is the basic, Upanishad, this thing that Vasudev Kutumbakam is something that we feel that the entire world is a family and we should be, taking care of each other. And your project of thinking that think globally and act locally is, I think, in a perfect harmony with what our culture thinks of. The second part, the organization from which I come is Kendriya Vidyalaya Sangathan. This is basically an organization of schools under the Ministry of Human Resource Development. We have about 1,239 schools in this and a population of 13 lakh students across the country. We have programs which include, cultural exchange programs. We have sports where the students move from one place to the other. We have, adventure activities and other things. But I think what studies which you have done is really showing another way of, organizing things or studying those things so that education can be made more meaningful, more scientific, and more research oriented. I feel that the work which you have done in the field of traditional games and sports will really be an insight to our way of thinking also as far as this thing is concerned. And I think we really require your guidance, your help, and the teachers from our country would really be looking forward for your guidance and support.
Namaskar, sir. Lavega, sir, and Chauhan, sir. My name is Umang Dawn, and I am a board member of Traditional Sports and Games Federation of India. I have questions, sir. We have many traditional sports in India like shooting ball, gulel, lagori, yogasana, and we are hosting many games and festivals since long time. So how can we approach Olympic Association and other TSG, traditional sports and games, to promote our games, local games at global level through your perspective?
I think that there are 2 key points. The one point is to open mind and to think through Olympism and through the Olympic education point of view that some values are common and are not just focusing the attention for the high competition. If you think about, for instance, what you can do through local culture, you can see that the main goal is not to achieve medals, is to learn better which is the meaning in that local context. So after giving this information and different knowledge to people that have different responsibilities, then you can try to identify best example of best practices in different fields. And for this reason, it's very important to work together in a network, because we can identify very nice experiences around the world, in one country, in one continent, one around the world, and it's necessary to identify them and afterwards to keep in touch with people that share the same goals. For this reason, I'm always telling you, let's go to work together. Let's go to make reality the network, because then we can find very easy ways to replicate something that has been going on very well in another context.
Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. You're welcome. Thank you so much.
We need to, I think about that the culture, the traditional games and sports, which on which so much of work has been done. We need to think about the curriculum designing in our school system also, so that the children at the local level can enjoy their childhood with the traditional games and also do the learning at the same time. I think it was a wonderful speech, sir. Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you, the organizers, Mr. Avinav, Mr. Prashant, and all people who are engaged in organizing this. This is a wonderful thing, and I think it is a great step towards the education of India. Thank you so much.